I'm gonna climb a tree.
Watch out.
Ah!
Hi there. Welcome to the Forbidden Limb Podcast. I'm your host, Richard New, and I'm here as always with Jeremy Commander and Brian Hink. We're going to continue on with our discussion from last week, and last 2 weeks in fact, with part 3 of when to move on from print on demand to manufacturer. We're going to go right from here, right onto the discussion as it was taking place.
Your original question was, how do I know what I'm going to do? You're usually going to make it yourself on your printer. If you are going to do a Kickstarter campaign, then I would probably price out both. So yeah, on the low end, I'm going to fulfill my campaign through the Game Crafter or Drive Through Cards or Print and Play Productions if I sell, if I got 300 backers. But if I blow up and it's like I got 1,000 backers or 1,500 backers, now I want to have prepared and done the legwork talking to a larger printer manufacturer, because my cost per copy is going to be a lot lower, and that's going to be thousands of dollars of difference in how much money I make off that campaign versus a print-and-demand manufacturer where my margin is going to be very low, very small.
Okay.
And in a previous episode, we talked about like Liberty playing cards was one that we were going to...
Yes.
If we only had a couple hundred backers in our campaign for Good Cop Bad Cop, we were going to use Liberty because they had a super low minimum order quantity. I think it was like 100. It was something very low. So we could have gone with them, and then until we got to a point where Ad Magic, it would have made sense, for their unit cost. I think they can go as low as Sherry was telling me the other day. I'm going to say like 500, possibly even lower. Ad Magic can go as a minimum order quantity. So once you get to that point, then you can go with something more like Ad Magic. You're going to get better quality. And then when you get to a point like 1,500, you could step up to like a Panda.
Yep.
It's a lot of other things to consider when going to Panda. It's going to take a lot longer to get there and that kind of thing. But so there's a lot of you can step up, to larger and larger manufacturers. And the reason you do that is because of the unit cost. So if I print 1,500 copies with Panda, it's going to be much cheaper than if I were to do 1,500 copies on a print on demand. Print on demand, you're not going to get the economies of scale, that you would with a larger manufacturer. Because larger manufacturers have huge machinery to print out, hundreds and hundreds and thousands of copies of a game in a very efficient way. Whereas print on demand, it's a much smaller operation, and so every single copy, is going to be more expensive than a large.
And in earlier episodes, we talked about pricing your game,
mm-hmm.
and so then figuring out your margin and whether you're going to sell only direct or you're going to go try to get into a distributor.
Yep.
And so using a larger printer means your per copy cost is going to go down. You have to have a larger order quantity, so that does matter.
So think about how many backers. So if we're talking to a Kickstarter campaign manager, they're a creator who did it for the first time, and they're trying to decide if they want to maybe manufacture through print on demand or a manufacturer. Or they're thinking about doing their first Kickstarter campaign. I think that's kind of who would care about this. When do I go from print on demand to a larger manufacturer? And that really depends on how many you're going to sell after market too. So if you have any kind of a distribution network, or you work with a distribution services company, like we use Impressions. If you have one of them who, like, I know when I make a game, Impressions is going to want 600 copies for me. So I go 600 plus however many backers I have. Let's say I have 400 backers. So then now I have 1,000 copies. And so now it makes sense for me to do a 1,000 unit print run. And then I'm going to have some direct sales too. We sell on our website. So, how many of those? Maybe I'll sell, 100 of those in the next few months, So then, you keep adding on. And as soon as you get to 1,500, that's when you can use like Panda, or a larger manufacturer, or whatever their minimum order quantity is of
or Ludofact in Germany, or some others.
They have a pretty high minimum order quantity. I remember when I started talking to them.
Yeah.
There's other really important factors too. So there's
time might be a factor too. If I'm trying to get my game out in time for Gen Con or summer con seasons like that,
yep.
I may want to print with a U.S. manufacturer, even if they're going to cost me a little bit more than, say, China, because it's going to be ready right away, or they can turn around very quickly, or maybe easier for me to ship and fulfill it. I met the designer of Red 7 at BGG Con, and that was on the hot list too. That was like number 4 or number 5. It was a great game. It's like Glory to Rome mashed up with Uno. It was fantastic. It was very interesting. All cards. Very interesting game. And I got to play that game. I'm sitting there playing it Sunday with some Canadians I met. And they have like a rules question. We're looking at the rules. And he comes over to the next table, the game creator, like, oh, no, you do it like this. We're like, oh, he's here at the BGG Con. And so I immediately asked him about his process in the game. So he printed that in Michigan. and he found a U.S. printer that was going to do what he wanted, and they had 56 card sheets. The game is exactly like 56 cards, because that was the press sheet that the printer did. So he could have to use some player reference cards and like a starting card and modify the game to fit that press sheet, because there's a little few extra cards. And for him, he liked being able to do it in the U.S., talk to someone in the U.S., English is their first language, they have good communication, shipping is easier for him, the print quality is very good, and that was the way he did that game, and that worked for him for that card game.
So that touches on, I'll just kind of wrap things up with the three most, I guess my three pieces of advice, the most important factors in moving from print on demand to a larger manufacturer. And one is just unit costs that we talked about. So, like how much is it going to cost in order to print with them? I mean, that's the most obvious one. Get quotes from dozens of manufacturers, at least 10. If you're going to manufacture, get at least 10, but you should be able to do more like 20 or more. Get quotes from them.
How many different countries should you be looking everywhere?
Look everywhere. Okay. Yeah.
Because I've heard U.S., I've heard Germany, I've heard China.
Yeah.
Like, are there other big places to be looking for manufacturers?
France, Eastern Europe. Yeah, there are printers in different places. I got a game that was printed in Israel, so
they're everywhere. But I mean, if you're talking about someone who doesn't know much about manufacturers, you're probably going to go with a bigger one. And so then it'll be Germany, but probably either the U.S. or China. Probably China, really. I mean, China, you're going to get the best deal. It's just can you get past the language barrier? So that brings me to number 2. So 1, unit cost. 2 is communication and customer service. So that's super, super important if you're in that category of just going from print on demand to larger manufacturer. You need someone to help you through it. You need someone who you can ask questions. You can ask them questions and they can help you and guide you a little bit.
Imagine if you have a very specific game as well, you'd probably want to make sure you found some customer service that someone higher up in the customer service ladder.
Right.
I have multiple games sitting on my closet collecting dust right now because they were Kickstarter games and they printed in China and something went wrong and they didn't realize that until they shipped and their backers got it. And they're like, oh, so we're gonna have to issue you new cards and we'll send you those next year, or we're gonna have to get rid of these or fix this component and ship it to you. And I'm not going to play those games. I literally have like 3 of them, just sitting there waiting for the redos to come before I open them up, because of some communication problem with printing in China that went wrong, and they didn't catch it until it already shipped to their backers. The backers are like, hey, this card is only one-sided. This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I've heard, I don't mean to stray from the third point, and we'll get back to that,
yep.
So I've heard, U.S. for speed, China for cost.
If you're in
Germany
the U.S., so
I just played Germany. Yeah.
Okay.
But if you live in Germany, then you should probably go with Ludo or a German manufacturer. Yep.
We had a listener question about the U.S. market versus the German game market, and so that I'm still learning more about. But I got to talk to the guy who's the chairman of the Spiel des Jahres committee, who decides the Spiel des Jahres, and he talked a lot about the German game market. And so the German game market is about as big as the U.S. market.
Okay.
Even though the population is a lot smaller, they buy a lot of games. And so there are a lot of game manufacturers in Germany. Ludofact is the big famous one. They have a video on BGG about how games are made. And they are super high quality primo games. If you have a really nice game on your shelf with really nice components, there's a very good chance it was printed at Ludofact in Germany. They have a high order quantity, and their costs are a little high, but their quality is outstanding. And they have a very good reputation. That's all they do is manufacture games, and they've been doing it for decades, and they really know what they're doing. There are other printers in France and other places. Days of Wonder is based in France, and Asmodee and others in the European market, and they use some printers that may be local there. I have Queen Games, some of their stuff here, and it just didn't tell me what country it's in. Made in Europe. In Europe, so it's the print manufacturer there, because it may be local to them, or the quality may be better. Or if you're printing in Europe, the advantage you get is now it's EU friendly. You can print and fulfill in Europe, and now it's much cheaper for European backers, and that may be advantageous to you. You can lower the cost of delivering your game to European backers because it was printed in Europe.
Exactly. Yeah. So that would be probably a whole other episode to talk about that. But then one thing I want to talk about too, just to distinguish the difference between publishing a game in Germany and manufacturing a game in Germany. So you can manufacture anywhere, and so you can market to those German gamers out there. There are so many of them, but you don't have to manufacture in Germany. You can manufacture anywhere, and then you would publish there. So like, at Overworld Games, we don't really have a distribution network in Germany. But what we could do is we could sell the rights to another company to publish in Germany.
Right.
And we could talk about that in another episode too.
If you want to qualify for the Spiel des Jahres,
you have to be published.
Has to be published in Germany in German, because the jurors on that jury are all German speaking.
Yep.
And if you get nominated, that may sell an additional 200,000 copies of your game.
Oh yeah.
And if you win, it could sell 200 to 500,000 copies of your game. That's huge.
And so
Sounds
now,
worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing that's kind of on my to-do list, is to find a German publisher out there to publish Overworld Games titles. So we're working with actually some publishers in other countries, but we don't have one in Germany. And I want to be eligible for the Spiel des Jahres award.
Or to reach that market, because that's a huge market.
Too,
just to reach the German market and all the people who buy games there.
Yep.
That's a significant boon.
Yep.
So I mentioned one more thing about Ludofact.
Sure.
Very, very high quality. They have fixed box sizes. They only do certain boxes. So if you're going to go with Ludofact, you need to research what kind of boxes they have, because they like, look, we have these 5 boxes. Your game has to fit into one of these 5 boxes, because that's all we do. And that's like, you can tell the Ludofact boxes because they all have inserts, and so the components hold a little bit better in the box.
Okay. I found that interesting.
I used to always be able to tell when a game was made in China versus in Germany, based on the quality of the box and the insert in the box. And a few years ago when I was buying games, I could tell that this is made in China, this is made in Germany, easily. This is Ludofact, this is a Chinese printer. Now with Panda, it's getting harder and harder to tell, as their quality management is very good. And I now have a hard time telling. I have to look at the packaging and think, where was this made? Because they've come a long way in just the past few years.
It's a good thing for the industry. More
it is.
competition.
It's great.
Yep. Higher quality.
I was going to share with you the made in China versus made in Germany meme. Talking about the quality of manufacturing.
That's awesome.
That's funny. For the audio listeners, there's a bike that is slammed into the front of the car. The car is made in China, and it is all crumpled up, and the bike is made in Germany, and it seems to be whole.
So let me transition into the third point too, that we have talked about already, but just to cover it. So the third most important consideration,
cost and
communication and customer service. Yep. So those were the first two, and then the third one would be minimum order quantity, because that's going to be super important to someone who's going from print on demand to a larger manufacturer. I'm only going to be able to sell 1,000 of these. So I need to find a manufacturer that has a minimum order quantity of 1,000 or less. And so that's the other most critical, I think, factor.
Okay. One last question for you then.
Yeah.
How do you? Is there any other strategies you can give us to minimize our risk when we move to a manufacturer?
Yeah. The biggest one, like I mentioned before, was just get samples. Ask for more samples. Usually, even when you're kind of in the quoting process, where you're kind of going through a few different stages of getting quotes from a manufacturer, you can ask for samples of like I've been getting samples of stands. Where if I can put a little card in a little standee for good cop, bad cop to turn it around, I got a whole bunch of different samples of those from different manufacturers to try to figure out which one was going to fit best. And then I asked for a piece of chipboard too, so that our guns are going to be made of chipboard. So does this piece of chipboard from this manufacturer fit in their stands? And what do the stands look like? I got one that's like purple. Like, I don't want a purple stand.
This is a nice thing about a print on demand manufacturer, is you can order all those components as blanks from them directly. You spend $8 and you order one of this chipboard and one of this stand, and you can actually try them all out ahead of time and see exactly what you're getting.
And so then another tip I guess I would have for someone in that situation would be to talk to people who have been there before, who have personal experience, not just hearsay too. There's a lot of people.
Have you used these guys?
Yeah.
How were they for you? Yep.
There's a lot of people on the internet who are willing to give you information, but a lot of them don't have first-hand data. They have heard about this and heard about that, but talk to people who have actually worked with these manufacturers and hopefully even printed with them to get their experience. I know that's hard to do, but
how would you find that? Like, would you just start going through the game shop and looking in the back of the boxes and trying to find?
It's more about the people. You find the publishers out. Find publishers out there. you might not know of any publishers if you're new to the industry.
You mentioned the Facebook group.
Yeah,
Facebook group. That some of them are active on.
Yep.
You talk to them that way, especially the smaller publishers. You can reach them that way.
Twitter is a great way to do it too.
Twitter,
yeah. You can contact them, directly. It's as a publisher, even a small publisher, you get a lot of people asking you, for not help, but more like trying to sell you things. And so I think a lot of publishers will kind of put up some shields there. People just asking, for help.
Well, that's why I travel. That's why I went to Gen Con last year, or that's why I went to BGG Con, was to get face-to-face with these publishers and ask them questions. So when I met the guy who designed Red 7, that's the first thing I asked him about. Like, what did you print, U.S. or China? What kind of what size press sheet did you use? And I asked him questions about his process because I was curious to learn more about how that works. I've sat down and had the opportunity to interview some publishers, and that's where I heard about the story where they had printed in China the first time, and all the games warped in the warehouse because it wasn't climate controlled. Mm-hmm. And after that, they went to Ludofact in Germany, and they were printing in Germany, even though the cost was a little higher because the games looked amazing. It was helping build their brand because the quality was so high, and it was easier for them to reach the German market. And they're like, well, but then the Ludofact's booked up, and the delays kind of bad. So I'm thinking about switching back to Panda, and so they had the pros and cons of switching back and forth. And I heard that firsthand by talking to that publisher.
Yeah, so go to cons, find your closest big convention, and go there and just talk to people. And even some of the smaller conventions, a lot of times you'll get local publishers out there. Like, honestly, I can't afford to go out to every convention in the U.S., every big convention, but if there's one that happens in the Bay Area, I'm going to be there. So, you can find some of the local publishers and possibly even, self-publishers or designers out there at a local convention. So that would be a great way to do it, probably the best way to do it.
Okay. Or build your network. If you have your buddies who are working on games, or they're locally, or you start a local game design club, or we have a prototype night. Like, I couldn't go to Gen Con this year, but one of my buddies did, and he specifically came back and gave me details about what publishers were talking about, what they were looking for, and some valuable intel based on him going to that trade show. And so we talked shop when he got back, because he had asked a lot of these same questions, and that was very useful. Even though I couldn't go, someone I knew went and knew I wanted information in certain areas and had asked about that, and that was very useful.
Definitely. So, James Matthews' Hitchhiker's Guide to Game Manufacturing is another good one. We can put the link up in the show notes, but that's another good one. It's a good starting point. It gives you just a big list of all the manufacturers, some things like minimum order quantity that they require, and just some simple data about them, metadata about their company a little bit, or maybe James' experience with them and what he's heard.
I read that multiple times.
Yeah,
it's worth your time.
It's good just as I would say a starting point, because now it's actually getting a little older now, but use it as a starting point, and then you can go reach out to those companies for quotes and to get more information about their company, and then you can test out their customer service a little bit too. When you start reaching out to them and ask for quotes, they're going to talk to you back, and maybe it's going to be 2 weeks before you hear back, and then well, these guys aren't very responsive.
Or there's the Board Game Designers Forum website, and it's designers the forum, and they post lists or once in a while updated manufacturers lists and their contact information. And that may be a way you go find one of those lists, then now you can reach out to all these game manufacturers through that list on the Board Game Designers Forum.
But again, just try to make sure they have some first-hand experience with it, and not just kind of hearsay.
Okay. All right. Well, I've had a great time discussing this. I've learned a lot about print on demand and manufacturing. And I hope our viewers have as well. I'm your host, Richard New. I'm here with Jeremy Commander and Brian Hink. If you have a suggestion you'd like us to talk about, like the last 3 weeks, this has been a suggestion by a listener. If you have a suggestion of your own, please contact us at theforbiddenlimb@gmail.com or theforbiddenlimb.com. You can go to our website, read Brian's blog. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can comment on the section below, and we'll try and answer any questions you might have. We'll have a new topic for you next week. Until then, see you later.